Hello everyone. Today is October 31st, 2017. Today I want to discuss an article regarding legal high-skilled immigration, more specifically the H1B work visa program as well as the OPT, which is the optional practical training program. And it's an article that was posted by the website reason.com, and it's titled Trump's Assault on Legal High-Skilled Immigration. And the link to the article is posted below if you would like to read upon it. And it was posted by a gentleman by the name of Stuart Anderson. And Stuart seems like a well-respected person that is an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute, and he's an executive director of the National Foundation for American Policy. So looking at his profile here on the Cato website, he also seems to have a graduate degree from Georgetown University, and seems like he holds quite an important position regarding policy, as well as some great credentials from a great university. And the reason for this video today is to discuss Stuart's article here, because given his background, what he has presented on this article is far from the truth. It's filled with a lot of fictitious claims here, and it's about time where someone such as myself, that's taken the duty to try and inform citizens of what's at stake here. And this has nothing to do whether you support President Donald Trump or you don't. This has more concerns regarding American citizens at hand who have suffered largely at the stakes of large corporations that want to reduce wages for all workers. And part of the way they accomplish this is using something called the H1B program as well as the OPT program. So the purpose of this video is to really dissect Stuart's article paragraph by paragraph and offer my perspective, given that I come from a background where I'm an immigrant myself, and I have been involved in the F1 student visa program, given that I attended both undergrad and graduate programs using the F1 visa. I also was a part of the OPT program, and upon completing my OPT authorization, I was involved with the H1B process, to where an employer sponsored my work visa. I ended up getting a green card because I married an American citizen, and I just wanted to lay out what the truth is behind the whole H1B program, what it used to be and what it has become. And it seems like Stuart is still living in the old ages of thinking what the H1B program was used for was, bringing the highly specialized, high-skilled scientists that lived abroad to participate in the American economy and create more jobs for American folks. So I want to take this opportunity to tackle this article paragraph by paragraph and inform the general public of what really is at hand here regarding the high-skilled immigration debate. So without further ado, let's do this. So let's look at the article here, and let's start off with the first statement, which is right below the title of the article, and it says, he, referring to President Trump, even wants to chase out foreign STEM students. Now, it's true that with these new restrictions at hand, that certain STEM students are going to be chased out, but let's really dissect what's going on here, because what's really going on is that there's STEM students and then there's STEM students. The latter being that these STEM students are graduating from well-established institutes like Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Harvard, Yale. These are the ones that we really value the most because they are contributing something beneficial to the American economy. They're working the really highly specialized jobs that companies sought them out for. Now, what people like Stuart fail to understand is that the former STEM students are just people who have come here for the whole intention of immigrating rather than really pursuing a valuable degree because they can contribute something positive to society. And because of this loophole in our immigration, what's going on is specifically folks from India have come in and not really looking to seek any valuable qualifications. They basically attend any of these low-tier universities in order to get a STEM degree, but it's not a highly valuable STEM degree, and they barely pass their classes. They, from my experience that I've seen in the electrical engineering department at one of the universities, a lot of these international students used to cheat on their exams where they would share notes and communicate with one another to pass their exams. So a lot of these folks that I saw in my university would not amount to anything greater. These were the types that could not find any jobs, so had to resort for their last opportunity, and that was seeking an employment through consultancy companies. And now these consultancy companies have been started by Indian immigrants themselves, and they realize that due to the desperation of these international students who can't find jobs outside of consultancy companies, they are reliant on these consultancy companies to place them with jobs and eventually sponsor their H1B. So what we're seeing is a huge disparity here. So when Stuart says he wants to chase out foreign STEM students, yeah, he wants to chase out these low-tier individuals that are not that highly specialized and go to these consultancy companies to get the H1B so they can do low-tier remedial work, which translates to a lot of these corporations hiring these consultancy companies to bring in low-tier workers that are on H1Bs, replace American workers that deserve these jobs and deserve the fair market wage for these jobs to then be replaced with low salary workers on the H1B. And now many of these critics like Stuart would argue, well, part of the H1B process is to file an LCA, which is the labor certification form, to where you have to prove as an employer that you're paying the fair market wage. So what people fail to realize in that LCA application, there's four wage tiers: Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. For Tier 1, that's the lowest amount of wage possible that you can pay a worker. If you're an American citizen, you have some work experience and you're making maybe somewhere between the Tier 2 and Tier 3 wage level. But because of the H1B, a lot of these people can get away with processing the labor certification form because they're paying the most minimum amount of wage, which is the Tier 1. So that's how they get away with paying low wages to these workers. So in essence, what Trump wants to get rid of is these low-tier workers. So yeah, he is going to chase out certain kinds of STEM students, but not all. And if you think I'm wrong about this, ask any individual that's graduating from STEM, from a well-reputable university, who also is on a student visa, and they'll argue that they agree with this process because they themselves are having a hard time getting an H1B sponsorship because it's become so impacted and blocked with a lot of these low-tier workers filing H1B applications. So when you have someone who's graduating with a rocket science degree from MIT and you have someone that's graduating with a rocket science degree from Louisiana Tech, they're treated the same in the H1B application process, and it could be that the one who graduated from Louisiana Tech gets first dibs in the lottery, and the guy who graduated from MIT, unfortunately did not get his luck of the draw in the lottery system. So there's rampant abuse, and this is what Trump administration is trying to get rid of. So with the first paragraph here, basically it's stating that the United States tech sector is an envy of the world. A lot of the immigrant scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs want to come to the United States, and there's no denying that. In fact, it doesn't have to be in the tech sector. Majority of unskilled workers want to come to the United States, as you can see with our current dilemma with the illegal immigration situation. So everyone wants to make it to the United States, and some people deserve to be here. There's no doubt about that. I myself, being an immigrant, I contributed something positive to the American economy, and it's not just by paying taxes, as most of these immigrants will say otherwise. There has to be more of a contribution to where you're not taking an American citizen's job, which I never did. You're being sought out for your skills because you're highly specialized and you're going to change the world and you're going to make a better America, whether it be creating an algorithm for Facebook or whether you're improving the payment infrastructure for these payment companies like Square or Stripe. These are where highly skilled immigrants are sought out for, and may the best person win in gaining that employment for these well-established jobs. So there's no doubt about it. But this whole concept of making lives miserable has become a top priority for the Trump administration. And as I mentioned earlier, the only lives that are going to be miserable are the ones that don't deserve this, because they're low, their skills are quite low tier. They're doing remedial jobs that warrant no H1B because they're not highly specialized. And much of these jobs that a lot of these so-called STEM students are doing through consultancy companies are called are remedial work. And how I define remedial is where there's nothing specialized about it. Anyone can train for these jobs, given the time and patience. And most of what these guys are doing is like database administration work, data entry, tech support, customer service, and quality assurance, the infamous QA jobs, which so-called certain tech companies want to hire. And these are really not highly specialized. And if anything, most of these foreign workers do a worse job than their American counterparts who are well trained in the job, were being paid the fair market wage until corporations such as Disney or Bank of America or Southern Edison or University of California, San Francisco decided, hey, we can just import low wage workers from India that can come in and replace these American workers that we're paying a high wage for, and can be trained in doing these jobs, and that way we can protect our bottom line. So majority of these H1Bs that are coming in are mostly for the low tier ones, and it has nothing to do with high skilled workers coming in. And this is where the main problem for people like Stuart, they have a failure to understand this basic dilemma here. Okay, so in the second paragraph, it seems like Stuart is getting into a little bit more detail that President Trump has been a restrictionist, and not only targeting just undocumented low-skilled workers, which for what it's worth, both sides of the debate, I think there's a large majority of people that specifically voted for Trump with issues regarding immigration, and it's something that Stuart and the far left fails to understand. And this whole concept of targeting immigrants, there's no target that's been placed. It's more trying to wield out people that are just unnecessarily coming into our country that offer no value or substance to the American economy. And he seems to be saying that there's an agenda to just stop immigration overall. And he's using his arguments that Trump is targeting high-skilled immigrants that came here legally. And what people like Stuart fail to understand is that legal immigration has also been abused. It's been hijacked. There's so many loopholes in the immigration process that I myself was able to come across, and it's just so horrific that this side here fails to understand these loopholes. And he then goes on to say that the very people who Mitt Romney during his ill-fated presidential campaign said should have green cards stapled to their diplomas. So we can see why Mitt Romney lost that election. And we can also see Hillary, who said the same exact thing, that she wanted to give people green cards who graduated with a STEM degree in the United States. And I don't understand how someone respectable as Stuart, given his educational background, failed to understand the inherent problems if you gave an incentive to where anyone who gets a STEM degree in the United States gets an automatic green card. Couldn't you see how that could be hijacked immediately, and you would see hordes of people from India, China, and wherever would just start coming in for the sake of just getting that coveted green card. So they wouldn't be coming here for STEM. They wouldn't be coming here to gain some valuable educational qualifications. They would just come here for their end goal, which would be to obtain a green card. And I just don't understand why he doesn't see this, like what the inherent problem would be if you just made automatic green cards available for anyone who got a STEM degree. The next paragraph here goes with discussing how the Trump administration is now screening out a lot of these H1B workers. And the way Stuart outlines this is more as taking offense into how the Trump administration is carrying out this task of screening H1B workers, and saying that that President Trump is more doing it as being a restrictionist on immigration rather than someone that's actually looking at the current abuse in our immigration process. And this is something that Stuart fails to understand, is that the reason Donald Trump was voted in was specifically in regards to immigration. When you have American citizens that are being laid off and replaced by cheaper laborers from India, who in turn they have to also train in order to receive a severance package, there is a blatant abuse to this program. And I'm surprised that Stuart doesn't address this anywhere in his article where there's abuse regarding the H1B. It just seems to be a one-sided argument, and it seems to be a reason for open borders, and that President Trump and his administration is some form of dictatorship that's trying to restrict any kind of immigration to enter our borders here, which is far from the truth. And basically this paragraph then goes into outlining what the Trump administration is doing, more specifically the USCIS, which is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services organization. What they're doing is trying to screen the process because of these blatant abuses of the H1B program. What they're doing is now requesting further evidence from people who have applied for H1Bs or who are also renewing their H1Bs to provide more evidence and proof that they're indeed involved in a highly specialized field. They're indeed paying a wage that is far above, the tier 1 market wage level. And, they have to basically submit proof that they're working for a legitimate company that, has sponsored them for a position where it requires someone of their caliber that has highly specialized skills to carry out this job. And, there's nothing wrong with that. I frankly don't think that even with this level of scrutiny it's going to work, because to prove highly specialized skilled, anyone can write up a paperwork. That's what immigration attorneys are hired for, and are probably one of the biggest fraudsters regarding the high skilled immigration debate, because it's in their best interest to receive business with these low tier workers and understand how immigration law works, and to fudge the paperwork to make it seem like that these workers are indeed highly specialized. I've encountered a lot of these immigration attorneys, and there's so much blatant abuse by these attorneys where they work with these foreign workers and devise a paperwork strategy to where they are trying to portray that these workers are indeed specialized workers and have certain highly specialized skills to what they're being hired for. So I don't even think this high scrutiny that's going on, where it's requesting for further evidence, is even going to do anything. Maybe it might make things a little bit more arduous for people who are looking to renew their H1B, but here's the thing. Even while you're waiting for a decision for your renewal process for your H1B, you can still legally work in the United States. So whether that process gets dragged out for another year, that's not really going to harm the foreign worker. They can still continue to work legally in the United States. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see immigration lawyers really love being in their position that they're in now, because now they're going to be sought out more, so business is going to be great for them, and their pockets are going to be filled with all these low tier workers coming in and begging for paperwork to be fudged, and basically the paperwork is just going to show how specialized these workers are. And all it takes is just writing some fake statements on an application letter and stating that the so-called beneficiary of the H1B is doing this specialized work, A, B, and C, and the reason they can do this A, B, and C is because they have a background based on their education. And once again, their education can be from Timbuktu University for all that matters, as long as they got a degree in that STEM program. And that's all there is to it. So I don't even think this scrutiny is going to solve anything for that matter. But Stuart seems to think otherwise. So looking into this paragraph even more, Stuart then outlines that the USCIS adjudicators are also far more suspicious of H-1B petitions where employers offer the lower end of the prevailing wage spectrum. For example, when hiring fresh graduates with less job experience, they think that's an indication that the individual's position isn't sufficiently complex to qualify for a visa. Well, here's the blatant problem with that. International students are allowed an OPT work authorization, which is like an internship work authorization permit. It's the same work authorization that's given to DACA folks, and it's basically an employment authorization card. So whenever an international student graduates from a university, they are automatically authorized to receive work authorization in the form of optional practical training program called the OPT. And this was started in the Bush administration days, to where President Bush wanted to allow international students the opportunity to gain some valuable work experience in the U.S. market, so they could take that back home to their countries, and not come empty-handed without any work experience. So, this was then further extended by the Obama administration, where there was allegedly a shortage of STEM workers, which is far from the truth. But during the Obama's administration, what they decided to do with the OPT program is extend it. So if you graduated with a STEM degree, your OPT could be further extended for 3 more years. So the problem with the OPT is that now that you've granted someone 3 years of extension, they have a lot of time to where they can sought jobs to where they think they have a high success rate of getting an H1B. Or, the other problem with the OPT is that because you have work authorization, and here's the thing that most of these pundits don't understand. When you get an OPT work authorization, you can do any job. It has nothing to do with what you studied. And a lot of these people will argue, no, the OPT, you're supposed to work in the job that you graduated and got your degree in. So let's say if you graduated in computer science, you have to work in a computer science field with that OPT. That's far from the truth. A lot of the OPT graduates that I knew from my university couldn't get a job, so what they ended up doing, they used their OPT to drive Uber. They ended up working in gas stations or working in restaurants under their regular SSN number. So, and they also eventually ended up getting an H1B sponsorship through a consultancy company. So there is no indicator of offense there to where the OPT was wrongfully used for a job that was out of the scope of what the international student studied in their course, their program of course here. And if you're already getting valuable work experience, then how is it that what Stuart is arguing, that H1B petitioners are hiring fresh graduates with less job experience and are going to pay them, the lower end of the prevailing wage spectrum? If they've already used their OPT to gain some valuable experience, which goes up to 3 years of valuable work experience, how are those fresh graduates? So once again, he's contradicting himself here, and it seems like he doesn't understand the immigration process, which, what can you say about that? Then moving along, there's a statement here where the Trump administration is also trying to defend a regulation that allows certain spouses of H1B visa holders to work. Tens of thousands of qualified spouses are currently locked out of the job market because their visa bars them from working. And this is something called the H4 visa program, and it started to where President Obama allowed spouses of H1B workers to be able to be employed as well, because what was going on is that a lot of these foreign workers that were coming in had husbands or wives that would also be dragged along with them and could not work legally in the United States, so were forced to just remain at home and be jobless. I do understand that there's some inherent issues with that, given that some of these spouses may come from a highly skilled or qualified background. But the problem is that the Obama administration, what they administered is, again, an OPT/DACA type work authorization policy for spouses of H1B workers. And what these allowed the spouses to do is work any job they wish to work at. So these didn't have to qualify for any highly specialized jobs. These could be, if they wanted to get a job working at the mall, or working at a job that was bagging groceries at your local grocery store, or whether they wanted to start their own side business. This is what the H4 visa allowed these spouses to do. And now you can see the inherent problem with that. Now you got spouses that are fighting against U.S. citizens that are looking for jobs. And, a lot of teenagers have shown a decline in working part-time jobs because much of these jobs are not available for them anymore. And what was going on is that any H1B visa holder that had a green card sponsorship and was in the waiting process of their green card could allow themselves to now authorize their spouse to get sponsored for an H4 visa. And with the H4 visa, once it was granted, these spouses could now go and do any type of business or job they so wish to do in the United States. And the challenging thing there is, I understand there's two sides to this, but now you're having a lot of these spouses that are not highly specialized, so to speak, that are now fighting against local U.S. citizens for jobs, and you can see the inherent problem with that. So now we get into the paragraph where Stuart starts to talk about how Trump is trying to put a halt to the whole STEM OPT program. And, as we mentioned, this was a program that the Bush administration had first implemented. And it was, to give a chance to foreign students to gain some valuable work experience that they could take back to their countries, their home countries, and, get jobs there. And the way Stuart outlines this article as if there's a sort of entitlement to where whenever we bring anyone into the United States on a student visa, that they should be granted immigration status and be allowed to become a resident here. Me being an immigrant myself, I find a lot of issues with that statement here because it's not an entitlement. I was not entitled to get a green card into this country because I got educated here. It was because I contributed something positive to the society to where the company, if they wanted to retain me because they valued my skills, not because they were paying me a low wage, but because, I could do the job that no American could do, that was warranted in them wanting to sponsor my green card. But it seems like Stuart is taking the angle of that anyone who gets a STEM degree in the United States should not be forced to go back home, but should get automatic H1Bs and then eventually green cards to remain in the United States. And I've already discussed the inherent issues with that kind of thought process, but the thing that's going on with the OPT program is that a lot of students that are entering the United States, mainly from India, are not interested, and I've reiterated this before in my earlier statements, they're not interested in pursuing an education and gaining some new skills. They're mostly concerned about starting their residency process. So once again, the vast majority of people that enter the United States, and that's largely been from India, the vast majority of them want to enter the United States not to gain valuable skills through education, but more so to start the residency process. When I entered the United States, I had two thought processes involved. I was like, either there would be some opportunities where I would want to start a life in the United States and become a resident here, or I was going to take those skills and go somewhere else. It wasn't a means to an end to where I wanted to remain in the United States. Whereas for the large proportion of people coming in, that's their end goal here. And a large proportion of these people, some of their end goal is to get the OPT. So what they do is they quickly gain admission on an F1 visa, and they maybe attend 4 semesters of college, to which then they quickly apply for the OPT. So the OPT is not a necessarily requirement to where you have to graduate from the university in order to obtain an OPT. You can gain OPT after attending college for 2 years and applying for it as part-time. So most of these students, what they use the OPT for is to to not even gain employment in gaining an internship. They use it to gain a job in something, doing part-time work like driving for Uber or for working at a restaurant or a gas station. And to add to that note, a vast majority of international students, when I was going to college, worked for liquor stores that were owned by Indians, or working for motels that were also owned by Indians, and they were working under the table. So some of them get more fascinated by earning that minimum wage dollar than they do about their actual education. And what happens is that they fall behind with their coursework. And that's when they start to resort for other means of trying to have a consultancy company sponsor their work visa, or try other means for obtaining some legal status to where they'll transfer off to another university and gain another F1 visa just so they can remain in legal status. So that's the inherent abuse that's going on with the OPT, and that's something that Stuart fails to understand. The other thing about OPT students is that they pay no taxes. What happens when tax season comes, they can claim to receive a full refund on their taxes, so they pay zero taxes. And a lot of employers also get a tax rebate on employing these OPT students. So there's a tax saving incentive for these employers to hire students on the OPT. So that's why Trump wants to really clean up all the rampant abuse that's going on with OPT. And honestly, if OPT is demolished, if there's a highly specialized individual that's graduating university that's really doing some brain changing work in the field of STEM, I think an employer would try and hire that and start their H1B process right away, rather than making them go through the OPT program. So the OPT program has just been rampant abuse, and this extension of enabling it for three further years just shows that we're more interested in foreign students rather than American students that are graduating with STEM. Then most of this paragraphs here are still to do with the STEM OPT program, and basically Stewart's arguing that the Trump administration, they have no legal grounds to fully terminate it because there is no economic rationale that there would be a legal case for completely eliminating the STEM OPT. And he's right. There is no burden of proof where the Trump administration can explicitly show that this is something that's abused, and it's a very complicated matter. I, for one, would not want to see the OPT totally demolished, but what I would like to see is to have certain restrictions on it, to where someone who's in university full-time should not be able to apply part-time OPT, and it should be scrutinized to where the person who's seeking the OPT is actually working at a job or a position to where they're getting their degree in. So you can't be someone who's getting a degree in computer science, but you filed for a part-time OPT and then you're driving for Uber. So there should be some regulations that monitor that kind of abuse. And I think that what would be more appropriate is for the Trump administration to reduce the STEM extension thing. Because, like I said, there's two different kinds of STEM programs. There's the people who went to a really highly reputable institute, and then there's the ones that's mainly enter the United States for the purpose of just entering and trying to start their residency process. And doing so, they enter these really low-tier universities and end up not gaining really meaningful work experience, and end up working for consultancy companies. So I think there should be a restriction on the number of years that are allotted to international students regarding the OPT. I I used the OPT for less than a year and immediately filed for my H1B. My employer filed for my H1B. So, if you're really sought out, you would be immediately sponsored for an H1B visa. So I really think that the Trump administration, what they can legally do is try to reduce the STEM extension and reduce it back to the original 1 year. So coming to this paragraph here, I mean, given that Stuart is, I'm assuming, he's a well educated person. This statement alone is such an oxymoron. So it says here, in the absence of STEM OPT, American companies that want to hang on to these students will hire them and place them outside the United States. Well, if there is no OPT program to begin with, how are these American companies even hiring these students in the first place? So how would they even come to know about these students in the first place and hire them and place them outside the United States? Now, let's assume that, what Stuart meant to say was, if there's a current employee that's on the OPT and working for an American company and the Trump administration tomorrow ended it, so that would mean that the OPT authorization for that student would end. I think that American company would immediately then sponsor an H1B worker for H1B visa for that worker. And if they really want to hire them outside of the United States, well, a lot of companies exist outside of the United States. These are multinational companies now. Microsoft has an office in India. Salesforce has an office in India. Facebook has offices in Europe. And, there's no reason why they couldn't place these people outside of the country. It's not that these countries are now going to drain our brainiacs. These are companies that are still going to prosper because they're American-based companies. So in effect, we're all still going to prosper. This whole idea that we're going to lose the battle with attracting all the best and the brightest, we're not going to lose that battle because the best and the brightest are going to succeed in this country and will immigrate, will be offered easier immigration protocols. But it's the less best and the brightest that are going to suffer, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're not trying to attract the low tier quality folks here, and this is something that, once again, I don't know where Stuart is coming from, but if there is no OPT program in place, that's not going to stop any of these companies from trying to find foreign workers. It's not. How did hiring happen before when the Bush administration allowed OPTs to be prevalent? America seemed to have been doing fine. There was no lack of workers, from what I understand, back in the day. So why now? So this all goes to the concept that he's actually, it seems like, I don't know if he's hired by the lobbyists that support cheap labor, but there's really no need for the OPT program. In fact, there's no company out there that says, oh, now accepting only OPTs. It's the best and the brightest who are being accepted. And a vast majority of these best and the brightest are not the best and the brightest. And, it's a failure to understand this is what the big issue is. And Stuart and many other pundits who share his philosophy regarding this high-skilled immigration and how it's so great for America, what they fail to realize it's not a large portion of these high-skilled immigrants that contribute positive to societies or even create companies or jobs for American folks. It's a very small amount. It's so tiny and minuscule that there seems to be a certain notion that every immigrant that enters the United States and graduates with STEM creates so many, goes out and creates companies and creates a larger portion of jobs. it's such a small, tiny amount, but this whole agenda is pushed that immigrants make the grow the American economy, and that's far from the truth. It's just a small, minuscule amount. And according to Stuart, he feels that if we totally restrict a lot of these OPT and international students from coming into America, then our country is going to suffer, and other countries are going to prosper. Well, if that was the case, we would have seen it by now. Things aren't improving in Europe. China is just basically copying everything the United States does. The economy has slightly improved in Mexico, but that's not stopped illegal immigration from prospering from there and entering into the United States. And if India, was in such great condition, a lot of their students wouldn't be coming to the United States. They would, go back and improve their country. But that's far from the truth. And there's also a sense of perception from Stuart that American citizens are highly incapable of improving their own country. It seems like that we need to rely on immigrants to make our country prosperous. Before the Immigration Act of 1965, we were, most of the Americans that were highly educated and really leaders in the field of math and science, and we put a man on the moon without any immigrants. But it seems like Stuart is insinuating that, American citizens are highly incapable of pushing into STEM, and we need to rely on immigrants for that. And once again, there's no harm in introducing immigrants, but a failure to realize that this whole immigration process, the legal immigration process, has been hijacked thanks to a loophole to where we're attracting more low-tier workers rather than the highly specialized ones. And that's what the main issue at hand is here. So it's something that Stuart would really need to examine more. So continuing this, in the next paragraph, Stuart then mentions if foreign students can't work in America after graduating, they'll be less likely to enroll in American universities in the first place. Now, is there anything inherently wrong with that? I mean, if a foreign student really wants to gain some valuable experience and qualifications and really truly values an American education, they'll come here regardless. So what Stuart is inherently saying is that foreign students really come to American universities just so that they can get American jobs right after it. That was not the purpose of an F1 student visa. Part of the process for the F1 student visa, as I mentioned before, is to establish that you intend to return back to your home country upon graduating. So this idea that there's a sense of entitlement that we should give to foreign students, that if they graduate from an American university, that they should also be allowed to work in the United States, is truly fallacious right here. And I don't know where Stuart is coming from. And further along, he says that eliminating STEM OPT would have a chilling effect on international students, causing many to rethink applying to U.S. universities. Now, understand this: there's two countries that have actually stopped the work authorization process, and these are the United Kingdom and Australia. So what was going on over there was a rampant abuse, primarily that was originating from India, where you had these travel consultants in India that would promise a lot of these Indian students that they could gain residency and work authorization by participating in an education exchange program, to where they attend these colleges and universities in Australia or the United Kingdom, and that would start their process of eventually gaining residency. And there was such rampant abuse of that program that what was happening is that all of a sudden you would see a huge flood of Indian students, primarily Indian male students, show up in Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, to where some of these people started questioning what was going on. Why is there sudden influx of Indian students all over the university campus? And what it turned out is many of these students from India were not there to pursue an education. They were looking to try and gain employment off campus, and then you saw them working, in retail, or working in the convenience stores, or in the grocery stores, or restaurants, and then wished to disappear just working those low-end jobs. So it became a really rampant abuse, to where these three countries, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK, finally said enough is enough, and we're stopping the work authorization program for foreign students. So if you graduate from any of their universities, you have to go back home, and so far it's working out for them. So I don't know why Stuart thinks that this is going to be an inherent problem for the United States if we send these foreign students back, or if they decide that they don't want to come here anymore. It's truly mind-boggling to try to understand where Stuart's coming from. So in this next paragraph, according to the National Science Foundation, international students currently account for 81% of the full-time graduate students in electrical engineering, and 79% in computer science at U.S. universities. And I can believe that statistics, because in my university, the electrical engineering department was primarily comprised of Indian international students, and pretty much the whole graduate program, I think it was around 95%, was primarily all Indian students. And the reason being for that is a lot of these international students coming from India already have a bachelor's degree, so it makes no sense for them to enter the United States and pursue another bachelor's degree, because they won't be allowed to. The other thing is, a lot of these students could not make it into their own country because they're not highly specialized once again. So what they do is they apply for a master's degree program in a lot of these low-tier universities. So, from your Louisiana Tech to Cal State Bakersfield engineering program, where it's not a highly specialized program to begin with, but because it's such easy admission, a lot of these international students from India seek out these low-tier programs because it's easy admission, and the cost is relatively cheaper than, say, trying to enter a private school. But having said that, many of them could not even get admitted to the MIT or the Harvards of the American education system, because many of them are not highly specialized or have good grades to begin with. So a lot of these universities, what they favor is bringing these international students because it's a larger revenue opportunity for them. So you have to understand that the U.S. education system has become more of a corporation rather than the investment for producing the highly qualified individuals of tomorrow. So what you have is this corporation that's running, and a lot of these universities have their own international student departments, where representatives of these departments go out to different parts of the world, and mainly they're going to China and India, because that's where a large majority of these students are coming from. And India is just on a larger scale. It's on a grander scale. It's 3 times the amount of students coming in than from China. And that's all thanks to all these reps that are going there. Reps from Virginia Tech are going there, Florida Tech. They have these channels invested to where they introduce their programs to these Indian students and tell them that they should come to the United States, and that there's all this promise of opportunity available for them. So a lot of these students from India already have their bachelor's degree, so they apply for these graduate programs. And the other reason doing so is because having a graduate degree gives them a one-up in the green card sponsorship, as well as the H1B sponsorship, because there's a special quota allotted for people that got a graduate degree versus someone who's coming in with a bachelor's degree. So they these Indian international students like to take advantage of that special grant that's given to students that have a master's degree. And what's become is a whole spam of so many of these international students from India that are just flooding the university programs, specifically in these low tier universities, and then promptly implying that they have a master's degree and that they should be given the special consideration for the H1B as well as the green card, when really their master's degree is quite worthless, so to speak. And that's why they end up going to a lot of these consultancy companies, because they can't gain any meaningful job experience at reputable employers or companies such as Facebook or Google or Microsoft. So once again, the whole education system in the United States, these U.S. universities have become a big corporation where they care more about bringing in international students because they pay a higher tuition. And that's what Stuart fails to mention here, that a lot of schools value these international students is because of just being able to make money off of them. And the other thing that he tries to point out is that you have less Americans that are enrolled in graduate programs. And what he fails to point out is that, well, how many undergraduates do you know are in debt with student loan debt? A lot of these students have to go for 4 years of university, and then they get this whole pile of debt. So why would anyone want to go pursue a graduate degree right after they finish their undergrad program? The other thing is, if you have a computer science degree, that's enough for you to go get a meaningful job. It's the work experience on the job that makes a person reach a higher specialized field rather than a graduate program. And a lot of the American students go that route because frankly, undergraduate programs are just expensive as it is. Why would they burden themselves into further undertaking more student loans and getting a graduate degree when it's not warranted, when they can get some hands-on work experience and start making some real money and gain some valuable work experience? Because at the end of the day, that's what counts more than having that master's in computer science, which frankly a lot of professors would argue that that's really not what a lot of these students need. Okay, right to the juiciest part of this article. The paragraph starts off with, besides the impact on universities, no credible economist thinks that kicking out masters and PhDs in science and engineering fields is good for an economy. Once again, no one is trying to kick out, people who pursue a graduate degree in STEM. What the administration is trying to do is clean up the blatant abuse that's going on. You have people who are well deserving of gaining residency that are highly specialized, highly skilled, and come from reputable, established U.S. institutions who are well deserving of it, but are not being granted that due process because it's been hijacked severely by low-tier workers that graduated barely with a passing grade in a less reputable program and are working for nothing more than a consultancy company doing low-tier remedial jobs. Moving along, he then says, these students are easing a tight labor market, not displacing Americans. Which is funny because you've heard the reports from companies like Disney, Abbott Labs, Southern Edison, University of California, San Francisco, to name a few, that have blatantly fired American workers and replaced them with cheaper, low-wage workers from India on H1Bs. And not only that, to add insult to injury, American workers have to train their new replacements in order to receive a severance package. So I don't understand why Stuart fails to acknowledge this in this article, or he hasn't even brought it up. But yet he argues quite the opposite, saying that they're not displacing Americans, which is such a laughing statement right over there. Moving along. So furthermore, eliminating STEM OPT flies in the face of the administration's own claim that it wants to make America's immigration system more merit-based. If high-skilled foreign nationals trained in STEM fields in America can't qualify for visas, then who can? Well, the ones who would easily qualify for a merit-based visa program would be the ones that graduated from a reputable institution, the MIT, the Stanfords, the Harvards, the USC, the Illinois Institute of Technology, those folks, and the ones who got a degree in a highly specialized field, computer science, software engineering, physics, so on and so on. And last but not least, the ones who are being paid a higher wage than their counterparts. And it's a good time now to pull up some statistics here to show you what's really going on with the H1B program. And to do that, I've pulled up a latest report from the USCIS's website, and it's a trend tables report that shows how many H1Bs were applied, approved, and what countries applied for the H1Bs, and what was the average salary for these H1Bs. So real quickly, we're looking at India as being the country which is sending the highest amount of H1Bs, and even China doesn't come close to that. I mean, you're looking at around 7 times the amount of people from India compared to Chinese that are coming in. 7 times the Chinese applications are people from India. And just look at the large disparity in the number of people coming in specifically from India, which makes you wonder what it is about India that a large majority of these folks are coming from. And you have to then ask questions what it is that's going on over there. And if you look at the average salary of these folks, looking at the highest salary, it seems like the people are falling under this salary range, 50,000 to 75,000, compared to the next higher salary, which is the range 75,000 to 99,999. So once again, the top highest average salary is in the 50,000 to 75,000 range, and the next highest salary is between 75,000 to 100,000. If you know, in the tech sector, the average wage is anywhere between 100,000 to 170,000. And the data here is showing that it's not even falling in this category for H1B. So why is it so low? I would have to ask Stuart here to try and give me a possible reasoning. But this is something that he does not address. And if you think that those jobs are not in the tech sector, let's pull up the report here for what job positions are being sought out mostly for. And as you can see, computer related has the highest amount, 231,000 for this year, and it's always had that highest amount of applications sought out throughout the years, as tailored to something like architecture, engineering, or medicine and health, which are very small as compared to computer related jobs. So this is telling me that most of these jobs are in the computer tech sector, but the average wage is between 50 to 70,000, and it's below it's below 100,000. That's for sure. So once again, these are things that Stuart fails to address in his article. So in closing, Stuart then says the administration's assault on high-skilled foreigners and international students is the clearest indication that its immigration agenda is not motivated by concern for American jobs or the American economy. This won't make America great again, it will do the opposite, in fact. Well, with the current trends, what's going on, it's making India great again, so that's why you have Prime Minister Modi that loves to cozy up with Trump, and you have a lot of these Indian consultancy companies that are now trying to cozy up as well to promise that they won't abuse the H1B program. But, you know, this is a failure for people like Stuart to understand that, you know, there's been a hijacking of the legal high school immigration process, and, you know, pundits like them have failed to acknowledge that. And it's these kind of articles that are so dubious that I don't know from what spectrum that they're coming from, but understand this: the reason that President Donald Trump was elected was due to immigration. Whether he'll do a great job of reforming immigration is yet to be seen, and you know, this is not an argument for in support of Trump. This is more of an understanding of the blatant abuse that's been going on with the H1B visa program. And if you're talking about international students, we clearly saw the statistics of the number of people applying for these H1Bs are Indians. What kind of diversity are you promoting where most of the majority of H1Bs are going to people of Indian origin? What is going to happen to the tech sector when it's already, if not, been overrun by, you know, people of Indian origin? Are you going to push Americans that are going to be interested in wanting to participate as well in that sector? Maybe or maybe not. But one thing that needs to be understood is that there's a blatant abuse of the H1B program, and hopefully this analysis sums it up.